Profile of Krishna Menon. One man to whom the exhibition of Indian art, just open at Burlington House, will bring quiet pride is Mr. V.K. Krishna Menon, High Commissioner in London for the Dominion of India. His new post and the exhibition are both tokens of a sympathetic intercourse between Britain and India, which, in earlier life, he can scarcely have expected. People here used to think of Mr. Menon as the arch-rebel working in their midst against the British Raj. For years, they watched him conducting his political activities from 165 Strand, the old office of the India League. Menon came to this country in 1924, a young man of 26. From Mrs. Annie Besant, his political guru, he had heard much about Britain. His study of Burke, Mill, and Shakespeare had given him a great wish to see the strange land which had such titles to fame and could yet keep millions of his own people in subjugation. His intention, then, was to return to India in 6 months. Instead, he stayed on and has been here ever since, rarely visiting India and then only for short periods. This tall, severe-looking man with classical features is by nature an ascetic. He neither drinks nor smokes, has never married, and is a strict vegetarian. Before moving a few months ago into that magnificent edifice in Aldwych called India House, he used to live in a small bed and breakfast room in one of the side streets of Camden Town. From 1934 up to his recent appointment, he sat for Labour on the St. Pancras Borough Council. He had been active in the Labour movement even earlier, working closely with Ellen Wilkinson in the grim Hunger March days. In 1939, he was chosen as parliamentary Labour candidate for Dundee, but resigned from the party over its India policy during the war years. Then, as always with him, India came first. He rejoined in 1945, after the Labour Party conference had passed its famous Independence for India resolution against the advice of the executive. Even as a boy, wandering in the streets of Calicut, the land of black pepper and coconuts, where trains pass through gardens and gardens touch the sea, Menon dreamt of freedom for India. Defiance runs in his family. His father, a lawyer, had little respect for British-made laws. His eldest sister fought her way against sex discrimination into a secondary school hitherto reserved for boys. Soon after graduating from the Presidency College, Madras, Menon was drawn into Mrs. Besant's Home Rule agitation, and she promptly chose him as one of her young volunteers. For 5 years he lived and worked in the Besant community, leaving only to come to England. His first job here was teaching history at St. Christopher's School, Letchworth. At the same time, he took evening classes at the London School of Economics, graduating with first-class honours and also gaining the London University Diploma in Education. After a period of research in the Psychological Laboratory of University College, which brought him his MA, he returned to the LSE, where he became one of Professor Lasky's favourite pupils and added the MSc, Economics, to his remarkable bag of academic distinctions. His inclination, however, was towards an independent profession rather than a teaching post. His next step was to qualify as a barrister of the Inner Temple. He practiced at the bar, but was not a great success, perhaps because law is a jealous mistress, and his first love has always been politics. A fluent speaker, he soon became known in Labour circles as an authority on India. In 1929, he was elected General Secretary of the India League, then not much more than a club where left-wing sympathizers such as Lansbury, Lee Smith, and Pethwick Lawrence met to discuss Indian problems with earnest young Indians. Menon made the League a political force. Before long, the Congress leaders recognized it as their chief mouthpiece in Europe. In 1939, Pandit Nehru came to London. He was impressed by Menon's work, and the friendship then formed between the two men has never waned. It was certain that as Nehru's star rose, Menon's would rise with it. When, last year, Nehru became Vice President of the Indian interim government, he at once made Menon his personal envoy in Europe, and later sent him to the United Nations General Assembly as a member of the Indian delegation. Finally, when Nehru became Prime Minister, Menon was appointed to represent his country at the court of St. James's. However, it would be quite wrong to think of Menon as merely a client of Nehru. He is a self-made man with an arresting personality who would, in any event, have carved out a notable career for himself, very probably in Parliament. He writes English as well as he speaks it, is the author of several books and innumerable pamphlets, and was the first editor of the Pelican series and the 20th Century Library, a most unusual distinction for an Indian. In personal life, Menon is difficult to know. He has an immense range of acquaintances, but not many friends. People either admire or condemn him. They rarely get an opportunity to break through his armor of reserve. He is sensitive to the reactions of others and tries to take them into his confidence, but he is seldom able to lower his guard. Only with children does he find it easy to unbend. To his subordinates, Menon often seems a hard taskmaster. He has an almost Curzonian passion for detail and likes to keep the strings of authority in his own hands. Tireless himself, he is often at his desk by 8 a.m. and is apt to work 18 hours a day. But he has seen enough of the ups and downs of life to appreciate the difficulties of others. His judgments are more generous than his manner usually allows him to show. Very few have ever suffered at his hands, though more than a few have tried to damage his reputation. Because of his critical role in the past, many people imagine that Menon does not like the British. Nothing could be further from truth. In fact, it is inconceivable that he would ever feel at home now in any other country. He has lived with the British so long and has known them so well that he has grown genuinely fond of them. With Lord and Lady Mountbatten, he has established lately a firm friendship. For his character and integrity, they have a high regard. We can be sure that the former rebel will do his utmost to strengthen the new alliance, the free alliance he has always wanted between his country and ours.